We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. First item is closed meeting. Be it resolved, the Montgomery County Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia hereby enter into closed meeting for the purpose of discussing the following. Section 2.2-3711, discussion concerning a prospective business or industry or the expansion of an existing business or industry where no previous announcement has been made of the business or industry's interest in locating or expanding its facilities in the community. Project 2020-003. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary?
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Demontz?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Chair Jakowski?
Aye.
6 ayes. And here's Supervisor Bone.
Aye.
All right, we're in closed session. Closed meeting.
You're welcome.
out of closed meeting. Is there a motion
So
to come
moved.
out of closed meeting?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Secretary, call the roll.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is certification of the closed meeting. Whereas the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County has convened a closed meeting on this date pursuant to an affirmative recorded vote in accordance with the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, and whereas Section 2.2-3711 of the Code of Virginia requires a certification by the Board that such closed meeting was conducted in conformity with Virginia law. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Montgomery County, Virginia, hereby certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements by Virginia law were discussed in the closed meeting to which this certification resolution applies, and two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion conveying the closed meeting were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Madam Secretary?
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Chair Chakowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is our invocation and pledge, and our county administrator can lead us.
We could rise for a moment of silence, and then I'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us pledge, please.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up is public hearings. The first one is proposed ordinance amending Chapter 10, zoning, Section 10-21, parentheses 7, and 10-29, parentheses third. Does that stand for third paragraph? What is that number after?
Subsection? Subsection.
Subsection,
three.
yes.
Oh, subsection, gotcha, okay, thank you. And Emily's going to tell us all about it.
These microphones are backwards. Really confuses me. Good evening. I do have two code amendments to go over with you this evening. The first is related to Chapter 10 and the subsections that Chair Fidzikowski just listed. This is specifically related to what we would call repair shops or automobile sales and service in two districts, both the A1 and the community business. In both of these districts, these uses have a size maximum of square footage for the buildings. And obviously the intent here was to make sure that you didn't have something that was a mega store size located in the more rural parts of the county. However, as you can see in A1, it's going to be a special use permit, so it's going to come through this process. And then in community business, we don't have a lot of community business in the county, and so it would be a rezoning. So for both opportunities, we would be able to see the scale of what was proposed and if it was appropriate. But beyond that, and in addition to that, it really can limit the reuse of existing structures. And that's what we've seen a couple of times before. Some of you will remember the M&M Tire rezoning we did just a few years ago. M&M Tire's been there for a very long time, but its building was, which is a very small building, was right at the maximum for community business when we were trying to work on making that to take away the nonconformities there. So that was one time, and we've seen it a couple of other times as we worked with people in violation. And basically, the staff recommendation was we could take off the size of the buildings so that the use could remain. We could still examine the size of the building on a case-by-case basis for the special use permit or for the rezoning. And then the board could ultimately still make that same decision, but not be limited in case something was 1,250 square feet, or in case maybe 3 bays worked really well there instead of what really is limiting to 1 or 2 now. So the code amendment that we have is very simple. That highlighted language I showed you earlier that was specific to the sizes, we're just proposing to strike that. The definitions remain the same otherwise, and the use classifications in the district stay the same otherwise. So it's a pretty simple text amendment. The Planning Commission held their public hearing in January on this text amendment, and those that were present did unanimously recommend the board approve this. And that's all I have for this one. I'll be glad to take any questions that you have before we open the hearing.
Okay, this sounds like something we may not have a lot of questions on. So does anybody have a question? Show of hand.
I just want to say thank you, because one of those is in my district. And I've talked to the guy several times, but I appreciate you being able to work something out. So I think it'll work.
Well, it does create a path for people to be able to move forward. Otherwise, they're just kind of stuck.
Yep.
Okay.
That's all.
Any other questions for Emily? Did you want to cover the next one too before we have the public hearing on each, or?
You have to do each one separate.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll have the public hearing for this. Ordinance amending Chapter 10 zoning, remove size limitation, auto repair, sales, service, and rental. There is no one that has signed up for this hearing. If there's anyone else that would like to come and speak for this particular hearing, you're welcome to come up. State your name and address. You would have 4 minutes. Seeing no one come forward, I am going to close that public hearing. Next up, proposed ordinance amending Chapter 10, Section 10-21 and 10-22, 10-34, 10-61, Wetland Mitigation Bank.
The text amendment related to mitigation banks has a little bit of background. We did receive a request for a mitigation bank project, and that's when we recognized that the use isn't currently defined in the zoning ordinance. Mitigation banks are an opportunity for people in the development community, and this sometimes even includes the county when we have a project going on, to be able to offset by purchasing credits for any impacts that you may have, for stream or wetland impacts specifically. And so as we see an increase in development, these are things that could be potentially more in need. And particularly if you have to match your watershed or your stream shed, or it has to be in proximity to your project, it can be more of a challenge for those in the development community to find these. So we sort of took a look at how mitigation banks work, and DEQ has this definition, but basically you're able to, as I mentioned earlier, purchase credits, and there is a restoration that takes place to offset any impacts that you have, or as they define, unavoidable losses. Credits are purchased per acre, per square foot, or per credit. Rates are set by the market, and then the actual credit ratio and credit amount the Army Corps uses based on different factors that go into each project. I should mention that the Army Corps and DEQ are part of this process. This isn't something that the county would just give approval on. It has multi-levels. And in the case of the application that we received, it had been through years with other levels of government, and no one had ever checked with the local government. And of course, an average applicant thinks that if you're dealing with the federal government and the state government, that maybe they would check with us, but that wasn't the case. So we not only hope to provide the definition in the text, but also reach out and share that we're glad to be part of the process more upfront, because in this particular case, someone's been through years and now is sort of just starting fresh with us. So we took a first look at this with the development committee, with the Planning Commission Development Committee this summer. They had several questions, a lot about things that would impact the assessment. And one thing that is important to know about these, they're put into a conservation easement. So a true conservation easement that's held in perpetuity. And so the commissioner already has a way that they evaluate those. And so they said it would be basically the same thing. We looked at other localities and how they treat them. And then, of course, we prepared text for review by the county attorney. I will say that during the work session, the commission did talk about this several times in a way of two factors. The first being they don't want the bank element of it to think that anyone's precluded from actually doing restoration work, which is done through FEMA or through the same process. It's just actual restoration versus creating the banks and the credits. The commission had some questions about that. And the other item that was important to the commission was just making sure that we started out with a special use permit, and they felt like down the road when we knew more of what factors there could be, that in our A1 and our conservation, that these could potentially become by right once we knew what these would be like in the county and knew what any impacts would be. So at the end of the day, the commission really felt like because there is a evaluation and money changing hands there, they wanted it to still have a special use permit process, because in our other districts, obviously A1, we focus on agriculture and forestry, and conservation is conservation. But we could see these being a good fit in the future, so we'll be working with our partners on that. Ultimately, from an impact standpoint, it's what you would think. There's different layers in the process to establish it, so it's not something that anyone could just establish on a piece of property. It has to meet certain criteria. As I mentioned, there is a conservation easement, and then there's the maintenance agreement for the perpetual maintenance of it. So there's the bank element and then the actual conservation element. In other localities, we did note that they were sometimes integrated as features, and so you'll notice that 2 of the districts where we're looking at them are PUD districts, because those typically are larger, and someone may incorporate a project like this into that project, particularly if they are going to have some wetland or stream impacts. They could offset them with a mitigation bank. So a mitigation bank in Tidewater, a wetland mitigation bank, may look something like this. This obviously is what works for their soils and their topography. Here, we would be looking at something sort of like this one on the bottom. You see the Loudoun County stream restoration. And that brings us to, basically, you'll notice that we talked in the text that was originally provided a lot about wetland mitigation banks, but it was never staff's intent to make that seem that we were precluding other types of aquatic resource banks being excluded from it. So we have the same 4 districts, but we did talk to the Planning Commission about taking the definition of wetland mitigation bank and modifying it to what was in your packet that just says mitigation bank. And that makes sure that we're talking about streams, wetlands, or other aquatic resources. They would still have the same process. It's still a joint process with the federal and state environmental agencies, as well as us. And then this is very much in line with the definition provided by EPA. So it has multiple positive impacts by changing that definition just a little, but still meets the same intent, and again, same districts. And at the end of the day, the use is just getting listed in the ordinance and is still going to be a special use permit process. So the commission held their the Planning Commission held their public hearing last week, and everyone present was in favor and recommended the board approve the text amendment. And that is all staff has on this text amendment.
Okay. Well, we'll handle this. Anyone have any questions? Raise a hand. Okay. Supervisor DeMotts.
Thank you for your presentation. It doesn't offset any of the requirements for stormwater management during development to do the mitigation bank, does it?
No, the impacts have to be the same impact. So stormwater would still have to be met on a project, but things like the infrastructure improvements could have a wetland impact or a stream impact, and those credits would match up with whichever bank it went to. But no, stormwater would still have to be met.
So we would still maintain, I guess what I'm getting at is we would still maintain oversight of making sure that water, if we approve a development, water would flow through and off that development properly.
Yes, stormwater definitely still has to live on its own projects. There are nutrient banks that even we have used in the past to offset credits where we couldn't meet the quality levels for stormwater. It's another example of a type of offset. But for a project, which may be anywhere in the region, that would have an impact, these banks would help offset that in the same shed.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question?
I'd just
Supervisor
like
Bowen?
to make a comment. I'm just so impressed with the Planning Commission and how they went through the different iterations, and the end result ended up being a really good, simplified code change,
Thank you.
clarification. I was very impressed.
I think they think so. We did try to make it a little more complicated for you guys, but they talked themselves out of it.
Well, thank you for that. I guess there's no other comments or questions. We'll move to the hearing part, and we have one person that has signed up, Beth Obenchain. If you want to come forward, just if you would give your name and your address, and you're going to have 4 minutes. And to help you with that, the lights on the lectern there, when it goes from green to yellow, then you have 30 seconds to sum up what you have. And
Right.
then when the red light comes on, it's over.
Thank you. I think I can do it in that amount of
All
time.
right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening. My name is Beth Obenchain. I live at 2010 Prices Fork Road, Blacksburg. I'm here tonight with my niece, Catherine Obenchain Pichet. We're fortunate enough to be 2 of the 13 family members who share ownership of a 500-acre family farm in the Prices Fork area of the county. We decided to create a stream mitigation and a wetland mitigation bank to conserve the ecological health of Toms Creek and Keister's Branch on our property and the neighboring wetlands, as well as to generate income we hope to sustain our farm. We've gone through a grueling, and that's not an exaggeration, 5-year process with the Army Corps of Engineers and the interagency review team of state and federal agencies to engineer and research how best to protect and enhance the ecological health of this part of our farm. We believe that including wetland and stream mitigation banks in the county's zoning ordinance would be a positive move for the county, as it encourages the best environmental practices to improve stream health and also water flow. In this case, the project is in one of the county's major watersheds, the Toms Creek Basin. Mitigation banks are tightly regulated by federal and state government, and inclusions of the mitigation bank in the county ordinance would permit an important new option for conservation work here in the county. Again, we want to thank Emily Gibson and the planning staff for their attention that they've given to this zoning change. We'd request that the county approve these 2 uses of a stream mitigation bank and a wetland mitigation bank under its zoning ordinance. And I'm happy to answer any questions if you do have them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we have no one else signed up, but if anyone else would like to speak at this hearing, you're welcome to come forward. Seeing no one come forward, we're going to go ahead and close that hearing. All right, next up is our public address. This is an opportunity for citizens to come up and speak on any topic that they would like. Same rules apply, 4 minutes. State your name and your address. And no one has signed up. But if someone wants to come forward, they are most welcome. Seeing no one come forward, we're going to go ahead and close public address. Moves us to addendum.
Mr. Chair, we have no addendum this evening. However, I did want to mention under item 7, items of consent, item G, MCPS transfer of appropriated school operating funds. We had placed that on the consent agenda this evening in anticipation of the school board taking action on that last week. Because their meeting ran long last week, they did not take action on that item, so that item needs to come off consent agenda this evening. It'll be back once they take action on it, proposed at their meeting tomorrow night.
Okay. There's no action from the board, Marty, for that?
No, I think actually we'll need a motion in a second to vote to take that off consent and put it on a future meeting.
Okay.
So moved.
Well, we're not there yet.
Or not?
We're still in addendum.
Oh,
All right, now we're going to move to items of consent. Well, I'm just trying to be,
I'd like to make
technical.
a motion to remove item G from items of consent until the Montgomery County Public Schools votes on that.
Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary?
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Frizikowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, now we need a motion on the rest of the items of consent.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary, if you call the roll on that.
Ms. Biggs? Aye. Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Chair Frizikowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is new business. And since our customary approval method is if we have no one that objects to the ordinances that we just heard about tonight, then we can go ahead and vote on them. So first one up is the ordinance amending Chapter 10 zoning section 1021, 1029.
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Madam Secretary?
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Chair Frizikowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
Next item is the ordinance amending Chapter 10 zoning wetland mitigation bank. Is there a
So
motion?
moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion in 2 seconds. But I'll give you more than 2 seconds if you'd like to discuss this.
I would like to thank Ms. Obenchain for coming forward to speak to her personal experience with the wetland mitigation banks. I know it's a long, convoluted process, and water quality is incredibly important. I know that's very important to them with their farms, so I really appreciate that information.
Any other comments?
I'd just like to echo the same thing. Thank you for coming and telling us your story and all that you've done.
And your brother.
And I would just like to say she's from my district.
That's a good way to sum it up. Madam Secretary, if you call the roll.
Mr. Shepherd?
Aye.
Ms. Blevins?
Aye.
Ms. Biggs?
Aye.
Ms. Bone?
Aye.
Mr. King?
Aye.
Mr. Motts?
Aye.
Chair Frizikowski?
Aye.
7 ayes.
All right, we now come to reports. And always first up is our county attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make a couple comments about you guys probably have heard the opiate litigations moving forward. We don't have any dollar amounts that we're going to be getting, but they are starting to wrap up. There's numerous fronts. There's the state attorney generals, including Virginia's attorney general. They're involved, and then we're involved with our law firm with, I can't remember how many localities, 40-some localities. And we're the biggest player at the local level in this area. And then there's been an authority that's been going through the General Assembly, an opioid authority that's going to be dealing with some of the monies. That was proposed by the Attorney General. And the way that'll work is some of the money will go to the state, and then a certain percentage will go to localities. And within those percentages, some of that money will be earmarked for certain matters, and then another portion of that money we'll be able to use any way we want. And so there is a little bit of flexibility. We're definitely going to be getting some. You probably heard the one recent settlement was done by state attorney generals with a consulting firm. It wasn't Purdue, but it was a firm that consulted with them throughout this whole opioid disaster. And I forget how much it was, but it was multiple millions of dollars. And I think the state of Virginia was getting $13 million in that. And it's my understanding that the attorney general has stated that money will go to the authority and not to the coffers of the state, which means we'll get a little bit of that money through those percentages. So it's working its way through. Purdue is still in bankruptcy, and so when that works its way out, there'll be something when that's done. And then we're also suing the three companies that distribute it. And that's coming very close to a way that's going to be all worked out. The localities that we're members of, the percentages that we get will be based on opiate deaths, overdoses within our county, and also based on a percentage of opiates that have come through the county. And so the different localities will have a percentage based on those type of figures that have been developed by someone who does that type of work at the university level. So it's still probably 6 months away maybe until it's finalized, but it's certainly moving in the right direction.
It's good to hear.
Yep.
Anybody have any questions for Marty? Thank you for that report. Next up is our county administrator.
Please note on the calendar that tonight may be one of the few times the county attorney's report took longer than the county administrator's report.
So noted.
I received a packet in the mail last week from the Census Bureau, and I was so excited. I thought maybe we were getting our results, but alas, it was not to be. I sent you an email today that is, and I'm sure you'd already heard that it's the end of September, but we did receive this very nice certificate from the Census Bureau thanking us for all our efforts in helping with the 2020 census. And in particular, I want to recognize Jen Harris and Emily Gibson, who are our co-leads on working with the Census Bureau on this. So I'll present it to you ladies for appropriate framing and display. The only other thing I have to mention is staff has been feverishly working on this little thing called the budget, and we will be back in this room next Monday night at 6 o'clock for a budget presentation, and I look forward to seeing you then.
Yeah, it's the season. We'll be seeing a lot of each other.
March is a
So
busy month.
now that Jennifer and Emily don't have all this free time, do you have something else for them to look into?
I don't know. As you know, I actually had an opportunity today to really start cleaning up some emails. The last month, as you know, was a little bit challenging for me. And so not only did I bomb you guys with emails today, I think I bombed them with emails today too. So we're digging out. Thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. All right, I'm going to go down my list for board reports, and we'll start with Supervisor Shepherd.
I don't have a report. I just have a request from Angie to see if she got any information on the guttering and what could happen at the fire station.
Is Scott working on that?
Oh, my God.
Oh, my gosh.
You okay?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to make you
Is she
hurt
okay?
yourself.
That's a worker's
She's got
comp.
half her office over here on the floor.
You were off camera.
That's right. That's why I sit over there for my grace. Yes, Scott Woodrum is working on that, and he's going to get in contact with the fire department. We did look into it and know that it is something that the county needs to take care of.
Okay. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure it didn't fall through the cracks.
Yes, we are taking care of that.
Okay. That's all I have.
Supervisor Blevins.
No reports. I just wanted to do a couple shout outs. First of all, Christiansburg High School wrestling team, they placed third in the 3A state tournament. So congratulations to them. Glad to see the kids back playing some sports. And I'm sure with football season, they're all excited, especially for the seniors. Then I just wanted to again shout out to our New River Health District and the task force for their wonderful job that they're doing, and also shout out to Blue Ridge Church for the facility. What a way this community comes together, and all the volunteers to get those vaccines. Again, I know we're still getting them. We have the ability and coordinate it to get the vaccines when we get them as quickly as we can, up to 1,200 a day, as I understand. And I just wanted to thank our task force and the health district for all they've done for our citizens.
Thank you.
If I could tag on to that, I believe it was last Wednesday or Thursday before the ice storm. The task force knew that the storm was coming, and they sent out sort of an APB and said folks that were scheduled for the next day to come on. They did well in excess of 2,000 vaccinations that day.
Excellent.
It was just unbelievable. So thank you.
All right. Supervisor Bone.
I agree and concur about the health district that's been working amazingly. Incredible leadership, collaboration. I also want to make a shout out to our fire rescue, law enforcement, VDOT for keeping us safe during the ice storms in the last week or so. So many of us were just hunkered down at home, just waiting for all that ice to melt, and hopefully it wasn't too treacherous for all of our people that helped try to keep us safe. I do want to thank the staff and everything that they do, especially during this time of year with budget, because it's pretty tough. Can't imagine, actually. I firmly expect to get a nice fat binder in a week or two or three, and that's not easy to
Thank you
put
for
together.
giving us some grace on that, because it may be a week or two.
Right. So, and then I do want to shout out to the school board, because I know that I've been receiving emails, and I'm sure my colleagues up here have been receiving emails from constituents about all the school board's decisions and the ways that they've been going about, trying to figure out how to get the students the best education that they can get, and it's not an easy situation for them, and I have a lot of sympathy for them and their decision-making process. So shout out for the efforts made for the students in our county. That's it.
Okay. Supervisor King.
No report.
Supervisor DeMotz.
No report.
Vice Chair Biggs.
No report. I just second everything everybody said. It's great.
All right. Well, yeah, we have definitely been through some challenges here with these ice storms, but come Wednesday, I think we're all going to forget that we ever had any ice, because it's supposed to be beautiful out. But I am also amazed at how this county and our people display their work ethic, their ability to organize, especially with the vaccines, especially when you have ice storms on top of it, but also for our police departments, our sheriff's office, that I know, because I have a scanner at home, that it was very busy for them. I guess you could call it nonstop, along with all our volunteers, our fire and rescue personnel too. Outstanding job to all of them, and we appreciate them so much, and we count on them so much. So that's all I've got. So without anything else to be said, we are adjourned.